Let's talk about the DOM. Cool. What is the DOM? If anyone just has an idea of what it might stand for, or what it could possibly mean, or just anything in general, what is the DOM? Very good. Thank you. It's the document object model, right? So what does that really mean? The first thing I could tell you is this whole thing, if I just put document, look at this powerful highlighting. This whole thing, the entire website, the entire page is the document. You could prove this by simply going into your HTML, and what do you see here? What is the first thing in your HTML that you probably learned a long time ago and maybe just like forgot? What is the doc type, right? The doc type, you're simply saying the doc type is going to be HTML, meaning all of this HTML, this is the document. And so in order to manipulate it, right, what happens is in your Rails world, right, you have a GET request to your server, and then what does the server do? It probably talks to the model, and then it builds an HTML packet. It builds all this HTML in the yield block, and then it sends it back to the user, to the client. The client will receive this. And then the browser takes all of this and goes, I know what to do with this. I know how to take this markup language and make it sexy and make it so that it's a website. And that's all that's really happening. So the DOM, right, is the whole document. We've turned it from all this raw HTML code into like a website, and we've made it so that each one of these things, the body, the div, can be accessed. Almost like, kind of like how you can access items in an array or items in a hash, almost like an object. And then like this, the whole model, it is modeled after what was sent in the HTML. That's just a way to think about it. So the DOM really is all of this here, and the fact that we can access them and we can manipulate them with JavaScript. All right, you feel a little bit better about the DOM? Let's reveal our votes here. Powerful. Just be careful, right? In sign language, this is something else, and like I'm just revealing my vote. It's different. If you want to know what it is, we'll talk later. All right, cool. So the DOM is basically a tree, right? You're going to learn a lot of different data structures. What you know right now is a data structure. You know hashes, you know arrays. And so one of the things in computer science is called a tree. And all that means is you have what are known as nodes. So if I were to take this really high quality 4K resolution image and I were to display it, you could think of the DOM as a tree, but like upside down, right? You have this like base root, and then it kind of spreads out and branches. What we have here is what is known as a tree structure in computer science. So right here, this number 2, each one of these circles is a node. So number 2 is a node, 7 is a node, and 5 is a node. It's super easy to think about because we've represented them in like very easy to understand English words. So for example, right, this 2 node, this number 2 node has 2 branches, and they are 7 and 5. Wow. 7 and 5 are children of 2. Wow, so far so good. Cool. 7 and 5. Would you describe them, if they are children of 2, as siblings? It's important. No, they don't have to be brother or sister specifically, just siblings, right? Not assigning gender to these nodes. It's 2019, there's no need for that, yeah? Thank you. All right, awesome. So now 7 has how many children? 2, and what are they? 2 and 6, great. Now 5 has how many children? 1, right? Would you say 6 and 9 are siblings? That's correct. No. They have like aunts and uncles and stuff, but I mean, whatever. No, they are not siblings. But what about this 2 and this 6? Yes, and it's important because we'll need that as we move through the DOM, and that'll make more sense here in a little bit. So just given this full thing here in terms of like a data structure, this is what the DOM basically looks like. You have the body. You have like a div right inside the body. And then this div has how many children? 3, right? H1, a p tag, and a what? An unordered list. All right, cool. I just trying to gauge how much HTML I have to talk about. You will learn a lot of HTML, and it's very powerful. You have a question? Yeah. Oh, it looked like a question. It's all right. You fooled me.
Sorry, the numbers kind of throwing me off. Does that mean that Q is also the grandparent?
No, this is the best image I can find, and this is actually bad because this should be like, I don't know, 14 or something. You shouldn't be repeating these notes. Yeah, sorry. I tried to glaze over that really fast, but you caught me.
So this number means like absolute.
Yeah, this is literally just a bad image. Imagine this said 14. All right, sorry. Thanks. And great question. Nothing gets by you. That eagle eye. All right, so, no, that was good though. Did what I say make sense to you?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So this div has 3 children, right? The H1, the P, and the unordered list. And so this is important because that's what your HTML will look like. So let's take a look at some HTML. If you haven't already, highly recommend you do this. I mean, not right now, preferably, but you can. If you hit Command, comma, which is a very common shortcut in a lot of Mac applications, will open up settings. If you forget that, you can always go, boop. I'm just kidding. Atom, and you can go to Preferences. Sorry, not Settings, Preferences. And then you can go into what I believe is, I'm just going to try to find it right now. Editor? Oh, yes, there it is. Show Indent Guide. This right here, Show Indent Guide. This is what it does. Basically, it draws these lines for you. These right here. These lines. And it's important because if you utilize these lines and you indent your code properly, it makes your code so easy to read and so easy to debug. So for example, right? Cool. This span has how many children? 1. It's H1, right? Just this H1 child. What about this div? How many children does this div have? 2, right? Because think about it. If I indent one space, I see this div ends, and then I have a span, and the span ends. So that means there's 2 children. See how easy that is? And then look, this div has how many children? 1, right? You could see it immediately. It's very easy. What if I asked you to debug code that looked like this? How many children does what have? You'd be like, no thanks. Nope, not doing that. So work on your indentation. It's very important, especially as you become more integrated and you want to level up your code. It's going to be one of the first things that you should really just be focused and worried about in terms of like leveling up that's not exactly language specific. So cool, that just makes a lot of sense. So let's continue. Are there any questions so far on just like children, nodes, the DOM is a tree, and what the DOM is? Vague understanding? Okay. Should we gladiator style this? I know you guys don't like to talk very much. Okay, cool. That sounds good enough to me. Just trying to make this interactive for both of us. All right, so I talked a little bit about this. All right, we can select these DOM nodes. What I mean by the actual document is an object is that you can literally grab them right off the page and do cool stuff to them. And so there's a couple ways to do that, right? You can grab it by an ID. I put a little cheat sheet on the bottom here for you. Boop, boop, boop. Cool. There's a couple ways. You can grab element by the ID. You can grab elements by their class name. And you can grab elements by their tag name. So what is an ID, what is a class name, and what is a tag? Yeah? Yes? Yeah, just what are they, or the difference, like just your idea.
Well, I know like the ID is unique.
Yes, they are unique.
And it's like the constant is how you select the ID, or something like that. Or like
the pound sign is used as a selector for IDs, correct?
There's selectors. I think there were different. I think there's like a point system or something out there.
Wow. The point system. Very good. All right, cool. So let's talk a little bit about this, right? That was actually really good. And I appreciate the responses and the attempts. And this is just good for practice, right? Cool. So we have an ID here. This is known as an attribute. So this div has how many attributes? 1, right? Cool. What are some other attributes you've seen before? Right? You have source here. Right? What about this bad boy over here? Ever seen this? A little bit of that? Cool. What about this? What about these? Boom! So how many does this input have? How many attributes? Powerful, right? And so they're just known as attributes, and they are used typically in either JavaScript or CSS to select them. So with CSS, you're obviously adding some style, and with JavaScript, we're going to add some behavior. And so here, we can grab them by ID. IDs are unique. They should only appear one time in your entire HTML. Your class name, however, can and should appear multiple times. So when you're trying to style like a bunch of different elements on your page, then they should be getting the class name. And then the tag name is just referring to literally the tag. So the body tag, the div tag, the span tag, the h1 tag, and the p tag. So you can grab all of them all at once. So you have like 40 p tags, and for whatever reason on your website, all the paragraphs are neon green. Guess what? A little bit of a get elements by tag name. You put the p tag in there, and then you can change the CSS on them. Cool? So let's actually kind of like mess around with that a little bit. So boop, boop, boop. All right. Great. You know, let's just dive right in. This is going to be fun. Cool. So let's talk about actually manipulating the DOM and like doing something to it. And I know that a good amount of you have gone through some of the labs, but the idea here and the important piece of this entire mod is going to be the process. How do I think about how I'm going to approach this, and how am I going to do it? Trust me when I tell you, you do not need to know the code. You don't need to know the code. You just need to know what you're trying to do. If you know what you're trying to do, you can Google every single part of it, and the syntax will be there. The idea is, can you identify what you're trying to do? So the first thing is, let's describe this one more time. Just in regular old English. Can anyone tell me what's happening here on these extra tweets? Just in English. Okay, that sounded like technically English, but also a lot of code. So what he said was, when you scroll to the bottom of the page, you should add more tweets to the page. That's exactly what's happening. And that's exactly what we want to do. So there shouldn't be anything like too crazy in regards to just simply what we want to do, right? So now let's describe it with a little bit of more process. When a user or a person, right, the scroll hits the bottom of the page, what do I want to do? I need to request more content, right? And so it's going to hit a server. When the data comes back, what do I need to do with that data? What does the data come back as? Packets. Sure, packets, right? It will come back in this language agnostic data structure called JSON. And so now I have JSON, and I needed to turn it into HTML, right? Because I can't just add JSON to a web page. It's not going to know what's going on. Like, it would be crazy if I was like in this HTML, and then I was like, cool, no big deal. Let me just throw on this like key with this value right here. What do you think is going to happen to my website? It'll probably display this text, yeah. But will HTML know what I'm trying to do? No, right? I have some data and I can't take that JSON. I can't take this like JavaScript data and throw it right onto the HTML. So I need to convert it into HTML. After I've converted it to HTML, I can literally add it to the page. I wanted to, if I had some more HTML, I can do, there's a div here, and I can put cool man, cool, and then I can close the div. If I had this, so for example, let's just say somewhere in here I had a const, and it was equal to a div and it said cool man, cool, sorry, that was embarrassing. This is the cool div, right? Let's just say I had this somewhere, I had my JavaScript, and it just equaled this. Would it make sense to take this, the cool div, and somehow put it right here? I mean, there's like a small piece missing, but would this make sense to you? If I had some sort of HTML, can I just like add it to the page? Cool, all right. That'll make sense a little bit. But the idea is that that's what we're trying to do. So let's actually like build out some functionality. So here I have this powerful website, right? Very cool colors. And if you look very closely, your eyes are not going crazy. There's some CSS magic that actually very slowly changes the hue. Like that? Yeah, I got bored. So, thank you. Cool. All this is it just says internet memes, some sort of child, and it says add images here. Let's take a look at our HTML. Oop. I have the body, and here I have outer node that just has more of these nested divs. Oh, wow, so nested. Finally, I get to internet memes. I can literally go into the Chrome DevTools and change this to something. I don't know. Alan Turing. Yes, I came up with that myself. There's absolutely no inspiration on the wall whatsoever. It's right there. It's Alan. He's watching you. All right. And look what happens. Look, Alan Turing right on the page. I can change this to a very powerful scientist, PhD, Brandon Collins. And there it is. Look at that. Brandon Collins right on the page. You can like really mess around if you wanted to. This is kind of fun. I get stupid. I do this all the time. You go to any website and you can open the Chrome DevTools, right? If you click this thing right here, it allows you to select something. So, for example, right, I can select this span. Once I click it, it'll tell me where in the HTML this is. So I see after big loss or markets, fear of lasting effects, and that's basically what's here. I can just change the inner text of this thing and change this to Wangtron wins gold medal. Powerful, and look at that. Boom. Like that? I know, dangerous. You know what gets even more dangerous? All right, cool. What do you guys like pictures of? Dogs, cats, dolphins, otters?
Yes.
Okay, must be a thing for this class. Sure. What about PA Rivers? All right, otters. Otters, cute. Want to make sure it's safe for work. You know what I mean? It's all being recorded. All right, you guys have a particular one, or look at this surprise otter over here. This one? Yeah. I mean, you're the one that told me to look up otters. Now I've got this in my search history. Cool. You can do a quick little copy image address, right? Let's think about this, right? How do you add an image onto a website? What actually do you need? What is the HTML tag that you need? Image, right? IMG. Cool. How do you tell the image where the image is? Right? If you forget image tag, HTML, watch this master Googling happening. Wow. You just have a source, right? So that must mean that somewhere on this page, this is some sort of image that has a source. So far, so good. You following me? Cool. If I use my handy dandy selector, I feel like Blue's Clues, right? I could see this image tag has a source. What if I mess with this source real quick and I change it to this otter? Boop. Whoa! Whoa! And then you can get crazy, and then you can screenshot this, and then just tell them like, oh my God, did you see the news? I may or may not have done this several times, but the idea here is that now that you understand how this is all working, you've like entered the matrix, right? You're now this next level web developer. It's all HTML, right? You should know this already. If you didn't, you're welcome. And so just armed with that knowledge, what we really want to do here is what happens when I refresh? Will Brandon Collins still be there? No, it doesn't persist. We'll talk about persisting data later, but right now, why does it not persist? It technically was on the DOM, but it doesn't persist because think about what's happening. If I hit refresh, right, what am I asking the browser for? It's a GET request to this index.html. So if I actually open my index.html, what is actually on it? Internet memes. It's going to get sent back this HTML, and then it's actually going to load on the page. So let's start messing around. The first thing I want to do is I actually want to add some internet memes to my website using JavaScript. What I can do is, have you guys seen this yet? Side by side? Okay, I guess impress nobody. You guys are great developers. Better than me. So let's talk about the steps. What I really want to do is I want to add an image to my website. So just thinking out loud, what are the pieces of information that I need and what is it that I'm trying to do? Just in pure English. You've already done some DOM manipulation. Right, like where do I want to add the HTML? But in this case, we're going to do an image. Cool. So where do I want to add it on my website? Right here on the add images here. Cool. Can I identify where this is in the HTML? Well, I can easily do that by clicking this Bad Johnson over here and seeing that it's right here inside this container, inside this p tag called add images here. So if I look back at my HTML, I have this container here and this add images here. All right? So I really want to add this image to this container, this div with the ID of container. So where do I want to add the HTML? Where do I want to add it? Right, but the div with the ID of container. Cool? So let's see if I even can grab it and have access to it. We talked about like the selectors. We talked about like get element by ID. How would I grab this div? Right, by ID, right? So cool, let's write some code, a little document, right? Because I'm referring to the entire document. And I'm asking to get an element by ID. And what's the ID here? Wow, powerful. Cool. Is this good? How do we know it's good? What should we do? We should probably do that, but yes, we should always test, always test. And I will tell you and I will promise you, the easiest thing to do is debug somebody else's code, right? Like it's hard to debug your own code. But what do you do when you debug somebody else's code? That's right, you don't trust them. You're like, hey, what's that variable? Oh, it's supposed to be this array. Is it though? Let's console log that thing. And so you should be doing that with your own code, and that's really kind of the main secret. So I have a const that's going to be called image container. What you really want to try to get into the habit is writing, like not like me, but good variable names. And that's going to be so helpful to you as you write more code. And all I'm going to do is console log the image container. I should see the div with the ID of container. So let's take a look. Boop. Boom. There it is. What you can do is you can add arguments to console log, like this is the image container. And then if you hit a comma, you can put in separate arguments. So you should see, whoop, Gangnam Style. Nobody? All right. Oh, I didn't hit save. Embarrassing. Cool. This is the image container. And there it is. You can color them because you'll have, I would assume, multiple console logs at some point. But look, check it out. If you put this %C, you're saying that, hey, I'm going to add some CSS to this string, and then you have to tell it what the CSS value is. So you need like a value and a property of value. And so all I'm doing is hello world, and I'm changing it to orange, and you'll see it right there. There's a lot of weird ones like brick red. Okay, that didn't work. Is it brick red? That also didn't work. I know there's weird ones in here. Goldenrod. Powerful. Yeah, some interesting ones. And then you could just, use any of the Power Rangers colors, right? They work fine. Cool, and it just kind of helps you identify what's where. So as you have like 6 or 7 console logs, if you color code them, I like to go Roy G. Biv, and so I can see the order of things. I'm a weirdo. But that's just a little pro tip. Tricks. So, great, we have this image container, right? What's the next thing that we really need to do? Right, we need to add the images, right? So now that I have the container, I want to add the images, right? Do I have an image to add? No, I don't have an image to add, right? I don't have the HTML to add onto the page. So what I need to do is, I need to create the HTML to add to the page. So far, so good? Because I don't have it. So how can I create this HTML using JavaScript? Well, in case you don't know, like I said, you can Google everything, right? Create an image with JavaScript. Yeah, let's do this one. Stack Overflow is our friend. Dang it. Disgusting. Disgusting. Cool. All right, so I have something like this, right? Document.createElement. If you don't necessarily trust it, you're like, cool, let's dig into that further, right? Document.createElement. Let's do this. What is document.createElement? Wow, MDN. Powerful. In an HTML document, document.createElement is a method that creates HTML elements specified by a tag name. So do I know the tag name that I want? Cool. So all I have to do really is do a little bit of this. Whoops. I don't know why my copy and paste didn't work. Okay, I'll just rip this like a champion. Cool. What the? Man, do you want to see me do this old school style? Oh, disgusting. Gross. Gross. Okay, I'll type it out. Sure. That didn't go as planned. Right, and what is the element name that we want? All right, image. IMG. Cool. So what I want to do is test it. Yeah, we should test it, right? Thank you, by the way. Appreciate it. All right, so const, right? New image is equal to this. So I can just console log. Oh, that's not going to work. The new image. And so let's take a look. Boop, boop, boop. There we go. There it is. It's just this brand new image that I made. Is this useful to me at all? No, this image doesn't actually have a source to it. So how do I add a source to this image? Well, let's do this. Let's take a look at all the properties of this image tag, right? Console dir will give me the properties. And so I'll see this image object, and I can see that it has all of these properties to it. Boop, 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 boop. Does it have an ID? Nope. Does it have any HTML inside it? Nope. Does it have any text on this image? No. Let's see. All right, we have like all this, like, wow, there's a lot of stuff in here. Cool. But do we have the most important thing that we need for the image tag? No. So what did I describe all of these as just now as it relates to the image tag? Right, they're attributes, but specifically they're also properties, right? And I could simply access an object and its properties by doing new image dot src. We see that it actually has an src property. So I can say the source is now equal to, let's do this. That's a good one. Either way, cool. So let's console log the new image. Cool. And so now I have this image with this source here. And that's exactly what we need to kind of like add on to the page. So what do I want to add? Right, I've got the div. Now I have the image. I've actually created this image. I've added the source attribute, so any necessary attributes that I need. And now finally, I have the image. I have where I need to add them. How can I add it? How can I attach it? Does anybody know? Okay, I can append child. Right? Are you familiar with append child? No? Cool, let's take a look at what append child is. MDN, my hero. Append child is a method that adds a node to the end of a list of children specified by the parent node. So that's the technical definition. Basically what this means is I can add a node, right, like this brand new node that I made, like the image tag, and it's going to add it to the end. So if a node has 4 children, if I add it, it'll be child number what? 5. And that's all I'm doing. And so this is how to write it. I could take an element, like this div container that I have. I can literally run a method called append child, and then pass in a child element. So let's do that. I have the image container. Actually, let's do it here. So you can see the magic. I have, wow, my copy and paste is really off, huh? I have image container, which is this right here. Oh, that's so painful. All right, I'm not going to do that in the middle of lecture, but thank you for the suggestion, because it messes up the recording. All right, so let's do this. That was painful. Thank you. Let's do this. I have the image container, and I can run append child. And what is the child element that I actually want to put on? The new image. So far, so good. So let's see what happens. Let's get rid of this. Oh, dang. Really? Whack-a-dactyl. It's actually a really good photo. That's all right. Let's find that otter again. Lame. Lame Miyoki. Oh, this one's cute. This one's cute. This one's cute. They're both cute. Copy image address. Breaks my heart, man. This is such a good photo. Oh! Oh, this is. I should be able to what?
You should be able to copy that into the console. Because it looks like wherever you copy on there is only you paste it on your app. But wherever you copy from Google, you only paste it in the console.
Yeah, it's so painful. Let's find out. Copy image address. Let's find out if what you're saying is correct. And I believe you have a very interesting theory. And you're correct. Yes. All right. So let's do all the code here at the console. Painful. All right. I can't. All right. Let's do this. Ready? Let's grab the container, right? So we should have the image container available to us. And then in here, do we have a new image? New image. Great. Let's change the source, because that one didn't work like a bum. All right. Ugh. Oh no. Let's fix that. This is not going the way I thought it would. All right. Boom. Wowzers. That was painful. And there it is. The otter image. Chrome really got me good. Copy, paste, just all over the place. All right, so quick review and then we'll jump into like events. But basically, the process is really important, right? Like, what do you want to do? I want to add this image. Where do you want to add the image? Well, I want to add it on this div. Cool. Can I get the div? Do I have access to the div? I do. Let me grab it. Let me test it. It is what I think it is. Great. Now I want to actually add the image. Cool. Do I have the image to add? Like, no. Let me go make that image. If I don't know how to do something, I will Google it. I make the image, and then I change the source attribute. And so now this new image is pointing to the picture that I want. Then all I have to do is just slap it on the DOM. I'm going to append this image child to this image container, and it'll be right there. Are there any questions as to how that happened or why we went through the process? Does anyone feel comfortable about the process? All right, cool. Does anyone want a break? It's been like 36 minutes. Coffee break, tea break, bathroom break.
No break. That's a break.
All right, why don't you guys take like a 5-minute break and then we'll jump into events. Cool? All right, cool. Let's talk about events, right? So this is a quick outline of kind of what we're going to cover today in this part 2, is what are events? Why do we need to listen to them? What is an event listener? What are some of the event types? Because if we went through all of them, we would be here till tomorrow or even longer. And then we will synthesize the knowledge of forms with event listeners. Does anyone know what that means? Me neither. It sounded really good. But basically, we're going to combine what we know about events and event listeners, and we're actually going to make something happen. Cool? With JavaScript. So let's talk about events. What are web events? Can anyone name a web event? The what? A double click? Sure, that's a web event. Anything else? Typing? A web event, for sure.
Like any sort of keyboard press.
Keyboard press? Absolutely.
Single click.
A single click. Wow, now you're really digging. Yes. Cool. Every single thing that happens is a web event. So for example, you see my mouse moving? Dozens of web events are firing because the browser needs to know where your mouse is, right? If you're hovering over something, it needs to know that, right? If I click on something, I type something, it needs to know that. So whether or not we see anything actually happening is a different story. But the fact is those events are firing. All of those events are firing. And so something like a user clicking, right? A form being submitted is a web event. When the web page first finishes loading, it's an event, right? If you resize the window, you close the window, those are all web events. So think about it, right? You ever close a window and then a pop-up comes up? Somebody knew you closed the window and then wrote code that when this window closes, open up this pop-up and tell you that a Nigerian prince is waiting to give you millions of dollars. You just have to send him a couple hundred first, you know? No big deal. And that's basically what's happening. That's like the internet. It's all just events and responses to events. So let's take a look at some events, right? Cool. If I hit the submit button, what happens? It kind of looks like it maybe refreshes a little bit, but that's okay. What if I hit this alert button? What do you think will happen? That's right, nothing. What about this console log or this console error? Nothing, because I haven't wrote any code to specifically do anything. Now the event fires, right? Like I'm clicking this button. This button is being clicked. Chrome knows about it, and the browser knows about it. Well, kind of same thing, really. But basically, the browser is tracking them. But because we haven't written any code, it's not going to do anything that we see as visible. It's simply just going to happen. In the same way that, like, let's just say you have something happening in your life, right? Like, my brother is about to, I don't know, be a dad for the second time. So my sister's pregnant. And I tell him, hey, give me a call when she goes into labor. That way I know to rush to the hospital. That is a significant life event. Just because he didn't call me doesn't mean that my brother and sister no longer exist in the world. Yeah? What? No? No, they're still alive. Object permanence, we learned this in like first grade or kindergarten. Either way, the idea is that just because he's not calling or texting me doesn't mean that maybe she's not going through contractions, right? Or that she's, feeling a little woozy, or she's like, all right, hit me up with that epidural time now, right? It doesn't mean that things aren't actually happening. It's just that I haven't set a notification for it. But once I told him, give me a call when labor happens, then only when labor happens will he let me know. And so that's the same thing with web events, right? Like, look, these clicks are happening, these forms are being submitted, double clicks, keystrokes, mouse moving, they're all happening. But until I write code that says, let me know, do you think Chrome's gonna let me know? No, the browser's not gonna do anything. So I have to tell it, hey, when this happens, do this. And that's kind of when the callbacks will come into play. So we'll see that right now. So, cool. I mean, before I move on, that was kind of like a weird analogy, but how we feel about it. Now you know a little bit too much about my life, but that's okay. Yes, no? But if I get a call in the middle of this, I'm gonna dart. Don't worry, she's not that close. So, all right, cool. So we can, in fact, listen for events. This is how we set up those notifications. But let's take a look at what are web events, right? Events. Do you remember MDN from Mod 2? Did Tishan go into this? Okay, that's all right. MDN is the Mozilla Developer Network. They are the absolute leading authority on JavaScript and anything happening regarding to like web documentation. So if you want to know more about events, you want to know about anything in terms of like how to write certain JavaScript code, like what is the .each, the .map, the .filter, the MDN. So if you just want to add MDN at the end of any of your like JavaScript queries, it would be very helpful. So cool, let's take a look at some of these events. Let's take a look at like just the scroll real fast to see how small this thing is. You see this over here? That means that there's a lot of events, right? It could be anything to include scroll. The fact that I'm doing this, Chrome's tracking. Not to like scare you like Big Brother, but the fact is like it knows about these events because it kind of has to. It needs to affect the page somehow. So on scroll, it will simply move the text at the pace and how much you scroll accordingly, right? It has to react to it. So certain things naturally have already built-in functionality, but you can add on top of it. Like if I double-click this word, what did it do? It highlighted this word, right? I can add additional functionality to double-click by listening to when somebody double-clicks. That's all. So let's actually do that functionality. Let's jump right into it. I have this alert me button. Let's talk about the process. Let's think about how we can make this do something. So as we just discussed in sort of like the earlier lecture, what's the process? What do I need? What piece of information do I need? What do I really need from the DOM to basically be like, hey, when a user clicks this alert me button, something should happen. What do I need? Yeah, I need the alert me button, right? That just makes sense, right? Like, hey, if I told you, like, can you pick up my phone? I have to go run to the bathroom real quick if it rings. Well, what do you need to pick up my phone? Probably the phone, right? That makes sense. So, cool, right? You need the DOM element, right? That you're basically trying to listen for. So, what is it in this case? Right, the alert me button. I need this. How do I grab the alert me button as we just did earlier? By the ID. What if, oh God, I hope I set this up for success. What if, right, I'm looking at this alert me, right? Let's take a look at it. Is there an ID here? Oh no. Oh no. Are we done? Are we like basically defeated? Is there nothing we can do in our power and authority to write code? Is it physically impossible to get an ID on this button? Attaboy. Watch. Wow. Can I grab this button by an ID now? Yeah, saw that? It's that full stack magic. You have it now too. As Captain Planet always says, the power is yours. Yeah, you're the full stack developer. This is like one of the coolest parts, right? If something doesn't exist on the page, you're like, oh man, it'd be so nice if I had this on the page. Wait, I could just add it. And there you go. So don't feel like you're limited because you're in fact not. This is the beautiful thing about coding, right? You can just do whatever you want. Right, if I wanted to add a class on here, wow, done. So now that I actually have this ID, right? Let me like name this something like less obnoxious, like alert. Cool. So what I can do is I can now grab it, right? I can ask the document, yo document, what up dog? Let me grab that element by ID though. And what was the ID? Alert. Cool. So what should I do now? That's right. Am I 100% sure this is correct? Absolutely not. I make typos all the time. My copy paste is broken. I can't trust anything. It's the Wild West over here, right? Const alert button. And then I should just quick old console log the alert button. I don't mean to sound like super like obnoxious, but trust me when I tell you, if you test every line of code, when it breaks, how many lines of code will you have to review? Just kind of the last one that you did, right? And that makes it so much easier to debug than if you wrote a bunch of code, didn't test it, and then it ran an error, and you're like, great, where do I look? There's no real specific place. So here, oh wow, actually it didn't work. See? Let's take a look. Did I not save it? There's an ID of alert on this button. Did I mistype this? Document.get element by. Do you see something wrong with this, Ali? This is I did refresh the page, but thank you. Huh. Oh, I know what happened. Embarrassing. So it's a good thing we tested, right? Smart. So let's take a look at the HTML. And let's take a look at where the script tag is. So where am I pulling in and executing the JavaScript? What line is that? 7, right? I'm executing this JavaScript on line 7. Let's take a look at where the HTML is and the actual body. Is it before or after 7? After 7. So if on line 7 in my HTML, I am asking for an element with an ID of alert, does it exist at this point in time? No. So naturally, of course, it would come up as what? No, there's nothing there. How would you want to try to fix this problem just knowing what you know? Probably take it down, down, baby. Cool. So, yeah.
Got a question about, I think you said numbers only sound like when, like the user defines it as that.
Yeah, this is like, Chrome's been acting really bizarre lately. It should have been undefined, but Chrome gave me null. So it's very interesting. I think Chrome is smart enough to realize that at this point, if I'm trying to query select something or like grab a particular tag, if nothing's there, it will purposely give you null. This is like a newer thing, actually. So if I hit refresh, based on the fact that I moved the script down, right, when line 42 executes, is the alert button there? Does it exist? Yeah, so where you import the script tag matters. We kind of talked a little bit about this yesterday in regards to like if I have 4 or 5 JavaScript files and they kind of depend on each other, where and when your JavaScript executes will affect your code. Cool, are there any questions as to why I moved the script tag all the way to the bottom and now it works? You have a different question? Then let Ali add something because I definitely missed something.
Oh, no, I was just curious if would another way around this be wrapping it in a doc?
Yeah, that's exactly what that is. Okay, perfect. So here's the idea, right? The idea is that I want this script tag to run after I have all the HTML. Right, that makes sense because this is kind of what the problem I'm running into. So let's do that. If I were to take this script tag, and put it back into the head, and if I refresh again, that button no longer exists when it loads. What I can do is I can wait until all of the HTML, that whole DOM, loads. Right? And now I need to know and Google, like, what's the code for that? How do I tell JavaScript to wait until the DOM loads? Well, we're running a little short on time, so I'm just gonna give it to you. But if we Googled it, I promise you it'll come up. What I can do is I can do something like document, right? I'm waiting for the whole document. If you remember, very quickly, I kind of glazed over it. What are some events? What is one type of event? Page load. So I can, on the document, listen for that event. Wait until that event. And so I can add an event listener. Yeah, that's right. And the event that I'm listening for is what? The page load, right? I'm waiting until the DOM and all of its content loads. So the event listener takes 2 arguments, right? The first argument the event listener is always, what is the event? What's the second argument? Yeah, it's the callback function, but here's why. Think about it, right? I'm waiting for the DOM content to load so I can do something. How do you tell JavaScript, the code, to do anything? You write a function. If you tell Ruby to do anything, you write a method. So naturally, in this event listener, I'm listening for a particular event, and then I have to tell it to do something. So the 2 arguments have to kind of be there. It just makes sense. So what am I listening for? Right now, I'm waiting for the whole DOM content to load. And now, when it does load, do this. Execute this callback. So I'm just going to have a little function here. Boop, boop. And I'm going to write it right in line. And that is going to be console, oh God, don't let me down. Console log, the DOM is loaded. There it is. Cool? So, all right, let me go move this alert button right into there, and also this powerful console log, and see if that doesn't do anything for us. Boop. And there's the button, in fact, exists, because the event is wait until the DOM loads, then, right, wait until the DOM loads, then do this, the callback. So the callback is console log the DOM is loaded, then try grabbing the alert button. Will the alert button exist when the DOM is loaded?
Yes.
Yeah, it does. It's there. So thank God we tested, right? Oh, it's been rough. Cool. So we have the alert button, right? Boo, boo, boo. We got the alert button. What do we need now? What happens? What is the feature we are trying to build?
Alert.
An alert? When the user clicks the alert button, do something. So I have the alert button, but now I need to set up that notification. So on the alert button, why don't we add an event listener? But what event are we listening for? Are we listening for a double click? Are we listening for a scroll? Are we listening for an enter key on the alert button? Or are we listening for what? Wow. Would you believe that? A click is an event. Powerful. And naturally, this is the event. That's the first argument. What's the second argument for the event listener?
Function, alert function.
Right. It's the callback function. What does JavaScript do when the button is clicked? Right? So let's write that little function right here. Bloop. And all I'm going to do is, when that button is clicked, I'm going to run this alert that says, ha, you done clicked me. Cool? So notice how I only added the event listener on the alert button, which means that if I were to click console log, will anything happen? Boop, 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 boop. What about console error? Boop, boop. What about alert? Ha! You done clicked me. And that's basically how events work. They're all happening, but only if we listen in on them can we then do something. Are there any questions on like adding an event listener, how to add an event listener, and what the two arguments are for an event listener? Seems pretty straightforward. Cool. There's some more details to it, and we will get into that. Does anyone want to walk me through like how to do the console log now?
Copy and paste.
Copy and paste what?
Alert, and you place it. Well, you have to give it an ID first, and then you substitute it and change the alert. Console.log and last.
Walk me through it. Remember, my copy and paste is busted, so unfortunately for you, you gotta walk me through a little bit. I know. Whoa.
Alright, so I guess we do another document, add event listener.
Document dot add event listener. So are you listening for something on the document?
Yeah, the page load.
We're already doing that. We're already doing that. We're already doing that. Yeah. Yeet.
Alright, so, well, I guess you gotta grab the element.
Yes. Attaboy.
Yeah,
So what element are we grabbing?
the console.log button. So you
Cool. The console log button, right? So where can I find that in the HTML?
under the data name, well, right the button right there.
The button right there. Got it. Got you, fam.
You gotta want to make ID.
Okay, cool. Let me do that. And what's the ID you want to name?
Console log.
Cool. Log. Loggy. Like a frog. Uh-huh.
That's it.
All right, done? It'll work now?
You wanna go back to your JavaScript,
Okay.
and then you wanna set it to a variable.
Set what to a variable and tell me what to write.
Constant, log button
Log button.
equals document, get element by ID. Login.
Yep. And then
And then, well, if you wanna test it out, you can test it.
let's just skip that, but yes, we should test.
Alright, and then you'll add like your next, your add event listener.
Like just this?
No, you want to do, what's it called, log button. Add event listener,
Okay.
and on the click, we're gonna pass it in the argument to click,
Yeah.
and then you're gonna pick the function that is gonna have a console.log
Something. Something. Cool? We ready to go? Let's test. Oops, just kidding. Let's test. Powerful alert. Console error. Will this do anything? What about this? Bloop, 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 bloop. Noise. Cool. Powerful. Plus plus. All right, cool. That's really about it, right? Like, what do I add this event listener to? And just kind of the process, right? So I need the DOM element, and then finally, I need to like actually listen for when something happens. All right, but what is that something? And that is the first argument is the actual event. All right, and the second is what do I do? And that is the callback function. Cool? All right, so let's talk a little bit more about just like a little bit more complicated thing, and then I have to talk about one more thing. So we might run just a hair long, but I promise it won't be like more than a few minutes. So the first thing is the next functionality that I want is on this form, right? I want to take a comment, right? Hit submit and add it to a list of comments on my page. That is a very common feature, right? Like making a post on Bookface, making a tweet, making a comment on like an Instagram photo. This is a very common feature. So let's think about it. What do I actually need here? What piece of information do I need? Right, like I need the user input, right? Whatever the user actually typed. So how can I grab the user input?
The button click, I guess. When they submit it.
How can I grab the button? How can I grab the user input? That's when I should grab it, but how can I grab it? A gets? Well, let's think, right? What is this? Input tag, right? Does it have an ID on it? Cool. Let's do this. There's an ID of new comment, right? So let's, in the console, the ID new comment. Cool. And let's save that into a const input equals to this. So what is the input? It's this brand new input field. What is the input dot value? What is the value of this person's input? Empty string. And so if I grab it right now, it's empty. But if I wait until the user types something, right, like Charmander, and then I grab the value, it will now be what's in there at that current time. So when I choose to grab it is important. And so let's think. When is it important to grab this input? When the user finishes typing, when the user submits the form, when the user closes the page, when the page first loads, when would be the ideal time to grab it? When the user submits the form, right? Like, hey, I'm done typing and now I want to submit. So what we really need to do is actually, on top of just this user input, we need to listen for when that form actually submits. So if I'm listening to when the form submits, what do I need? Hint, the form. All right, am I saying anything that's like absolutely wild or something that just makes no logical sense? Cool. So I need the user input and I need the form. So how can I grab the form? Well, I can just kind of like figure, the form is here with an ID of comment form. Powerful. So const form equals to document. I'm going to show you one more thing. There's something called the query selector. It is the newer form of JavaScript. And you can then tell it if there is an ID of comment form, then it needs a hashtag comment-form as opposed to get element by ID. I can just use the same CSS selectors if you're already familiar with them using Query Selector. So I should test, but I don't really have too much time, so I kind of want to like make sure you understand this information. So I have the form, right? And on the form, I want to make sure that I know when the user actually like submits it. So I can add an event listener. And what is the event? The event is submit, right? I'm going to go into this quick aside that's kind of important, and that is there's two ways to submit a form. I can either type into here, blah, 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 and then press enter, or I can actually click the submit button. HTML5 has evolved to a point where it will recognize either a click or a submit on a form as the proper way to evaluate whether or not a user submitted the form. But the form is actually, the technical one is submit, because forms submit, right? If I click a button, that doesn't necessarily submit the form, but it can. So for here, we should be listening for a submit, and what we should be doing is there's some sort of function. That's like the next thing. What I want to do is I simply want to log, right, submitted the form. That way I'm testing. So if I refresh and I put in some cool text, I take a look at the console, what I want to see is on the submit, I should see here submitted the form. So let me take a look. Bloop. Huh. Did you see that? It sort of flashed and then went away. Let's take a look at it one more time. Bloop. 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 So what do you think is happening when I submit this form? What happens in Rails when you submit a form? Not exactly. That is exactly correct. It sends the information somewhere. Do you remember when you submitted a form, it sent what type of request? Get, post, put, patch, or delete? It sent a post request. All right? So what it's trying to do is this form will try to post somewhere. The fact is, if we take a look at my HTML, it's a little sneaky. Sneaky. I have a form, and there is literally no method. If there's no method, what do you think the form defaults to? Post, correct. And then what is the action? Also no action. So it doesn't have it posts to essentially nowhere, which is like, is that what we want to do? No, right? We don't really want that to happen. We want it to post somewhere. But we will get to that in tomorrow's lecture. But the idea here is that there is a default action that happens on a form when you click submit, and that is it sends a post request. If I see an anchor tag, an A tag, literally like a link tag that looks like this, and it goes to google.com, what is the default action when I click this anchor tag? It opens like a new window, right? It goes to the link. So here, what I'm trying to prevent actually is the form submitting. So the default action of this form is a submission. What I want to prevent is the default action. A form submit, right? The event listener in the callback will always receive the event. So here we can put event because the callback function will receive the event. It has to know what the event is. So what I want to do is I want to take the event and I want to prevent the default. I don't want that form to submit. I want to stop it from submitting. So if I actually do this and I hit submit, the form doesn't submit anymore. It just pauses. And that's basically what's happening here. It doesn't mean that prevent default stops the full page refresh. It prevents the default for this particular event. And the particular event is this form being submitted, which looks like it tries to submit nowhere, so that's why you get this weird refresh. Cool? All right, it is 12:03. I don't want this to drag long, so let's take a break. We'll find some time on the calendar this afternoon, and we'll finish this lecture. Cool? You had a question? Or?
No, I was never.
Oh, all right, cool. That's all I have for you this morning.